Beautiful. So hello and welcome. My name is Anja and I'm a parenting success coach. And we are talking with conscious parenting experience with Annika today. And Annika is called the Light Maiden online. You will find her under the Light Maiden. And she works as a coach, an artist, a writer, a speaker. So welcome Annika.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you for being here. People will have so much to gain and learn from you that I'm very excited to have you here.
Oh, I hope so.
Yes, absolutely.
We'll see what comes out of my mouth, right?
Suddenly pause. Oh, okay. Wonderful. Okay, so let's just start by chatting or discussing a little bit about you before you decided to have children in your life. What was your life like, Annika?
Well, for me, it was always clear that I wanted to be a mom.
Mm-hmm.
And almost 10 years ago, I met my husband, now husband. And it was really funny. Like we met and then we had our first date and then we had our first night together. And after that first night together, I woke up and in like half asleep, I told him, "You're the father of my children." And he didn't run.
That's a good sign.
But it took us almost 5 more years until the first child arrived, and those 5 years were beautiful. They were filled with adventure. But looking back, I ask myself, like, what did I do with all my time?
Yeah.
Like when you're a parent and you look back and you think like, oh my God, I had so much time back then. What did I do?
You felt like you had a full life too, and you're like, well, how on earth did I have all that time and not? What was I doing?
What was I doing? Exactly. No, we weren't too bad. We went on travels, like we saw Japan and the Philippines and Egypt and had a good time together. Mm-hmm. We were double earner, no kids. We were originally living in Germany. Mm-hmm. So we were both born and raised in Germany.
Oh, okay.
And then we married, and then we ended up both unemployed and very stuck in a situation we didn't want to be in.
Okay.
And then we consciously decided to see where life would bring us and apply to positions outside of Germany. And we ended up moving to Ireland in 2010, so okay. 7 years ago.
Right?
Exactly. And then we were here in Ireland. We were both working in German for American companies in the customer support. And then it was time. I felt it, and then I had a miscarriage, okay. And then the second pregnancy went through, and we had our first son, Lucan. Mm-hmm. I'm the oldest of 4 or 6, depending on how you see it.
Okay.
So I have 5 half siblings.
Okay.
I have 3 sisters from my mom's side with her new partner. Okay. And I have 2 brothers with from my dad's side, who he had with his wife.
Right.
And,
right.
But they were all 8 to 12 years apart from me.
Okay, so you were the big sister.
Exactly, I was the big sister, and my mom was quite overwhelmed with 3 under, I don't know, 4 or 5.
Right.
And me then being in my teenage years, and so I took on a lot of responsibility there. Okay. So I thought I was quite prepared for parenting.
Yeah, you raised a few others. You thought that
exactly.
an easy thing.
It's not the same though. It's not the same. Even as a sibling, if you take a lot of responsibility over, I know, like I took them loads of places. Many people thought I was the mother of these three little beautiful girls, you know.
Right.
I changed a lot of nappies. I didn't have that experience of being pregnant, and I didn't have that experience of being responsible all the time.
24
And
hours a day,
it hit
yeah.
me quite hard when it came, and you never knew how tired you can be
Right.
before. I thought like, oh my god, I thought I was so tired. I'm a little bit ashamed every time I told a parent that I was tired, like, because I stayed awake too long and watched too much telly or went out last night.
Tired in a different way, a different kind of tired, right? Not a bone chilling to the, like, I cannot move my leg, arm, or any, my mind is not working kind of tired.
Yeah, there is like this beautiful word called mombi, I think, like the mom zombie, where
Oh,
you just
no.
like, you need to pick up another laundry bit, whatever.
I
So
like
yeah,
that. Yes, that makes sense.
so I thought I was quite prepared, but when Lucan, my firstborn, came in, and my partner went back to work, then shortly after, like a week after or so, and I was alone with him all the time, I felt super isolated. I was very tired, very bored by the constant,
Yeah, and I think that is so
feeding
important.
time.
We feel that being bored, but how can we be bored? We have this precious being. It is boring a lot of the time. It's as beautiful and delightful it is. We never talk about the boredom. It is kind of boring. There's only so much that they can give back to you, and there's only so many hours that you can stare at them.
Exactly. And then I was also like, we had to, we were kind of isolated. Um, and then we only had one car, so that was gone most of the time. And then we had to move when he was 8 months old. Because the landlord said he needed the house for himself, and that was in the middle, like it was December. We had December storms while we had needed to move.
Oh my goodness.
And it was just like, thinking back to that time, I felt very isolated. I felt very lonely. I felt like on the weekends when Dennis was home, when my husband was home, I just tried to escape into my studio where I was like designing and sewing dresses and costumes. Like that was my first dip into the entrepreneurial world, like doing my own stuff as well. But I remember it took me about 13 months to feel for the first time myself again.
Yeah.
I kind of lost myself in that provider, in that mother role, in that constant milk bar as well, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Breastfeeding and going like,
Yeah. Okay, and so
And
now with sorry, carry on.
and what came with that as well, like what were the first conscious observations about things that we pick up from our parents that we thought we'd never do. Like I reached a point where I was just so tired and so lonely and frustrated and just so bored by the constant, like, okay, nap time, we go for a walk, we come back, we dress in like bath time and then bedtime and blah, 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 the whole routine thing that I started. When I was too frustrated, I would start shouting.
Right.
And I observed myself and I was like, what? Where that came from? Like, where does that anger come from? Where does that like instant reaction to something when he does something wrong, where does that come from?
Yeah.
And that was my first, like, parenthood brings you to places and brings you to edges you have never experienced before.
Yeah.
And those little people, they can trigger you so much, and they can bring you to a point where you boil and you can't keep it down any longer. And then at depends how you react. But my first instinct, the behavior I learned from my mother or my parents would be like, not my dad so much. He's not a shouter, but I was mostly raised by my mom.
Okay.
And her partner. And so there was a lot of shouting going on. There would be a lot of like, I am a very sensitive person. I cry with every big emotion I have. So you can see me crying when I'm happy, like immensely happy. When I'm sad, when I'm angry, when I'm like, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And whenever I would cry, my mom would go into shouting mode because it would trigger something in her, right?
Yeah. Runnable weakness. Something, I can't help you, feeling helpless, many things. Yes. Yeah.
And so every time I came to the point of total exhaustion, or then every time I couldn't handle my own feelings around the boredom and the loneliness, and saw that in my child and him crying, I would go off and go into shouting mode, and was like, okay, no, this is not the way I want to be. This is not the memories I want to make for my child.
And I think what is so lovely with that, and that is so honest and true, which I love, is the changing point, because I had very similar experience. The changing point is you're looking at this little person and this little person's eyes, and they completely have your heart, and you're able to sort of stop and say, wow, you know, how can I shout at this teeny thing? How this little person's doing what they're supposed to do. And so it is that awareness back to us. And it can also bring up a lot of things from our childhood, saying, wow, how come nobody stopped and looked at me that way? Right? It's a big journey, what comes through having a baby.
How, like, by having children, there was a lot of work me around like my childhood and the way my mom treated me, and the place she was, and trying to understand, and also trying to understand like, oh wow, really, when I was there to raise my sisters, right? I can understand her overwhelm now. I can understand why she had these massive ideas about perfectionism and having the house clean, and I always saw her as like the house being clean was more important than what was going on with us. Right.
When many people, that's the only area they can have control of. You can't really control another person. So suddenly you're like, okay, this is where I'm going to have the control.
And I found that in myself too. Like sometimes I fall back into that and look around and think like, oh my God, I need to clean. But there are more important things to look after first.
Yeah. And it's that surrender to what is. That even with the baby and then a toddler, they're only there for a little while. Right? And to keep that in mind when it's tough, when it's like, oh my gosh, just 5 minutes by myself, 5 minutes, you know? And so what's the age difference between your sons?
I have like Lucan is 4.5 now, and like 2 years and 2 months later, Aiden came.
Oh, okay.
And that was quite a shock to us. We just thought about having a second baby, and whoops, I was pregnant. So instant manifestation. It's not that I don't know how babies are made. No,
it was a shock.
I had to learn. I had to learn to accept that pregnancy, and I had to forgive afterwards. So when he came, there was a lot of unresolved feelings. Like my partner had to do a lot of forgiveness then, because he was crying a lot. Like Aiden was crying a lot, just because I was withdrawing so much. Like there was a lot of depression weaved into my pregnancy and afterwards as well. Right. So that was a big learning journey as well. In pregnancy I had to surrender massively, because my legs wouldn't work any longer. Like from 17 weeks on, I had too much relaxin, which is a hormone, comes in directly before childbirth that normally loosens up your ligaments. And it with 17 weeks I was in pregnancy yoga on all fours, and she said to us, "And now lift your leg." And I couldn't. And from there on it went worse. I went onto the crutches. I was sitting at home a lot, and I had to surrender to that too.
And that's hard because you had a little toddler around too. So, you know, you and then all the mama guilt comes on saying, "Oh, but you know, if I could only just take, you know, he's what's his life now?" Yeah, it's tons of swirling stuff. That's very understandable.
There was a lot of suppressing emotion through eating. So I gained a lot of weight in that pregnancy as well. I hadn't talked to my mom at that stage. I stopped contact with my mom when I was 3 months pregnant with Lucan.
Okay.
It was like there was a lot of drama going on, and I put up my boundaries. I said, like, I lost my first baby in the first 3 months.
Right.
I'm in the first trimester right now. I'm on the phone now crying for 1.5 hours. I don't need this any longer.
That's very brave to recognize that and to decide, okay, I got to put me and my baby first. That's hard.
I needed him. I needed him to make that, to put up that boundary.
Right.
I didn't have any contact to her through my second pregnancy as well.
Okay.
She met them when Aiden was about 6 months old.
Okay.
So, but that was just her meeting them for like 1.5 hours. We didn't have a big conversation or anything. There was this feeling of me like depriving them of their relationship they can have with their grandma.
Right, separate to yours, right.
Exactly, like seeing it separate from my journey.
Because
they didn't only choose me as their mother, they chose her as their grandmother as well. And there might be learning in this or not, depending on how that like evolves, but it's not mine to decide.
I love that. I had to do some work around that too for myself, for things that we would decide thinking, oh, that's, you know, not good, or that's not safe, or I don't like how they do. Now, safe is different, but sometimes it's our idea of safe, and really actually they are very safe. And the children themselves can just learn so much from different relationships, having that safe and grounded home, right? So they've come from a place of how ideally it is, you know, being loved, supported, and then being able to journey from there and have, very different relationships. They're not having the same baggage. They don't have the same, they see it just as is, right? Which is wonderful.
Exactly. Yeah. And so that was what came in then after my second was born. And then with the two of them, and like we were self-employed by then. Right. We had our own market store with chocolates and cake pops, and there was a lot of work involved.
I can imagine doing that at the time with two little people.
Exactly. So it was Dennis was home by then, like he didn't work in an office any longer. So we had the days split between like children and work, right? And whoever wanted a break could say, like, you know what, I do the chocolate.
That's true. That's true. But that would have been a totally different version of how you could parent from the first one when it was just you, and then having some support around you. I mean, that must have just changed your whole. You get a moment to think, right? Which when you have the kids, that whole thought process, you can never finish a thought. There's always somebody needing you.
It was like around Lucan's first birthday when I saw that my partner was just like, he was close to burnout. And I was like, you know what? I'm kind of bored here anyway. Why don't you come home and I see what I can find that can feed us. And first I went into like interviews in different offices and got jobs offered, but nothing felt right. And that beautiful opportunity of taking over a chocolate stall on the market and learning how to make chocolate came along. And I had a big love affair all my life with chocolate.
Be careful.
And so it was just the perfect solution. And then of course it got hard with the pregnancy and me not being able to stand and walk and all of this, but there was a big learning journey in this too. But yeah, there is he's very hands-on. Like he, like everything he can do, he does, except for the breastfeeding. He's there, you know. Like he's very much in this whole conscious parenting with me.
Oh wow,
And,
that is just beautiful. That is really beautiful, because it gives you even the opportunity to think and discuss stuff as it comes up. Whereas if you don't have a support system, be your partner or a friend or somebody who kind of gets that, it's just still so much burden on us to kind of think it through and sort of say, oh, I just realized. And when you think of things, it takes a while to process. It's not just gone like that. It's a whole journey. And so that is really lovely for him too, to have you as a support going through things, and everybody able to, you know.
I'm a verbal processor, so if I can't talk about things, like they kind of muddle along, and I can work them out in my journal somehow, but like having somebody there and just like dumping whatever is in my mind and then like getting feedback on it and then thinking more about it is brilliant and beautiful, and I wouldn't miss it for the world.
That's right. That's right. Let me. Okay. Okay. So let's. So the support center. How did it come about? And we should actually mention that you have number 3 any day now.
Yes.
Along, pregnancy number 3. And how is this actually? Let's stop there. How has this pregnancy been for you at this stage? Because having done a ton of work for yourself, for your awarenesses, for your consciousness, having parented as a couple too, and kind of found a balance. You did travel with them and lots of different things. How has this one been, this pregnancy?
I had, with the birth of my second son, I had a massive spiritual awakening. Like I felt like in labor, I felt so connected to Mother Earth and Spirit and all the women who have birthed before me and all the women that were birthing in that moment with me. And just had this massive feeling of connection. And that sparked off a very different, deeper journey in myself, where I felt like I need more of that connection. I want more of that connection. Not only to myself and trusting myself deeply, but and knowing myself deeply, but also having that connection to everything around me. Because it sparked a remembering of that feeling of connection when I was a child, and I would play in the garden and I would feel connected to every little bug and bee and tree and stone around me. And I mean, my children have been great teachers in that department, being really present in the moment and leading me on walks to places and little fairy corners, especially here in Ireland. There is magic all around. You know?
Very true.
But that sparked something in me. And so about 6 months in, when I was very exhausted, very, very exhausted with my, oh no, it wasn't even 6 months, it was about 4 months in, because I tried to keep up everything I did before the second came around, right? Right. But when there's a second one, like even when one sleeps, the other one is awake normally. And it's a different ball game again. Yeah. And
learning, when you think you've just got a handle on something, it's like, oh, okay, not so.
Oh gosh, motherhood or parenthood is the ultimate teacher in surrender, in my opinion. Because,
and I think that's what they need to be teaching. Never mind all the other stuff. That is the key. The rest
surrendering
to
constant change, to
possibility.
Constant reassessing. Okay, this is working for us. This is not working for us any longer. Does he need a second nap? Does he just need one nap now? Is it like, when can we do? When is a good time to go outside? Like, we had morning walks for month and month, and then suddenly it didn't work any longer. And we're like, oh, okay. I need something different that works, right?
Yeah.
So constant surrender. But I was so exhausted. There was no self-care, no time for myself between the business and the two children.
Right.
There was not a connection inside, not to myself, not to anybody else. It was all about...
You were no longer Annika, right? You were this mom, you were a business owner, a chocolate maker, but Annika's soul was...
There wasn't even like the role of the wife was completely gone. There was no communication between me and Dennis because we were just plain exhausted that we couldn't talk to each other anymore.
It's like band-aids all over the place, right? Okay, you put that fire out. Okay, you fix that hurt. Okay, yeah.
And then there was the pressure of a new business in like the second winter that we went through. Just making enough money to put food on the table, right?
Yeah.
And so I found myself running on sugar, on chocolate, on like, and I found myself in a parking lot screaming at really strangers for like throwing one of my ice creams down.
Oh.
Because it was like, I'm running on that stuff. You just ruined my, fuel. And I observed myself kind of like over here, like screaming and crying and being completely shaken by this incident and going like, something is wrong. Where are you?
Right.
You're kind, you're loving, you normally understand what's going on. Like, where are you coming from?
And unfortunately, normally when we notice that, we are so far on empty. We're not like kind of empty. We are like, damn.
No,
yeah.
There's nothing was there.
No.
And I remembered my tools. I went through a lot of depression in my teenage years. I had a traumatic experience. I was raped when I was 19. I had 2 suicide attempts when I was 20. So since then, in those years, I gathered a lot of tools about how to deal with these things, right? And I recognized that I'm in postpartum depression, or just depression caused by everything.
Life, yeah.
Can't even
an overwhelm,
if it was postpartum, like if it was tied to the birth, or if it was just like in general that I was in a deep down phase of my life. And I'm like, okay, what tools do I have? What feels good right now?
Oh, beautiful that you were able to have any of that awareness. It's hard to find the tools when it's okay. We can all meditate when we're feeling in a good place. We can all sort of bring self-love when we're sort of in an okay, but when you're that far, that's hard. So that's beautiful. Okay.
But I had that awareness in that moment. It was like, okay, that something needs to change.
Right.
And so I started meditating again. And there was like this beautiful free meditation experience that Oprah and Deepak offer.
Yeah, I just finished their one just now. I love them.
Exactly. Yeah, they're so beautiful. And I had done a couple of them before the birth of my second. And it just popped up again. And I'm like, okay, I'm doing this. Yeah. So for 21 days, there was like the 20 minutes for this meditation was a non-negotiable.
Oh, amazing.
And after that, I purchased like 3 of their bundles or something like that I could like do like 3 months and then start again with the first. And I haven't stuck to that experience. But since then I have meditated every single day. Right. And sometimes it's 3 minutes, and sometimes it's 5, and sometimes it's an hour. Yeah. But I have never stopped meditating since I've started after that sugar ice cream incident.
After the lowest, you found your way to bring you back.
Kind of, bring me back. Then yoga joined. So I did the meditation, and then the yoga joined. And then in meditation, like one of the realizations was that I needed to contact my mom and offer her to see them when we were in Germany. Okay. So that was the healing around that. relationships started in meditation. And one other thing that came in meditation was like, you need to look at that sugar issue that you have. There are other ways to live, and on the market there were beautiful traders that had like sugar-free options, natural sugar brownies and stuff like that, or then really sugar-free food as well. And I'm like, okay, I so slowly but surely it came up from my subconscious into my conscious, like this is an experiment I want to do.
Right.
And so in that December 2015, I stopped eating processed sugar. Mm-hmm. And since then, it's we had a couple of setbacks, you know, like once in a while, like I can grab something, or when I travel, it's hard. Sometimes there's something in a sauce or something like that, and I have a hangover afterwards.
Right. Oh, for
sure.
Really, when you cut it out, you really notice it.
Yeah, but I noticed that my body is very sensitive to sugar, to processed sugar, and so I went into just honey and fruit. Basically, that's all I eat normally. When it comes to sweetness and the natural sweetness, and in carrots and stuff like that, you know.
And you're doing that for your children too, I guess, right? Like the children don't have.
They don't have processed sugar here in the house. Like when they go to a birthday party, or like when they're at their grandma's house or stuff like that, you know. Then it's a different story. But here in the house, there's no processed sugar. Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. I have noticed a big difference between my first and my second, and now this third pregnancy is actually completely sugar-free.
Yeah.
So that is incredible. But I have also gained so much spiritual connection because my depression is gone. Like my mental health is so much better, and my channel opened when I stopped eating sugar. And that's like a long way to answer your question, why this pregnancy, how this pregnancy is different.
But you know what? That was so interesting. I never ever thought of that side of things, based on channels opening.
Yeah, but that was when my channel opened, and so since then I have deepened my journey into the spiritual work that I do. With contacting spirit guides, seeing other people's spirit guides, auras, energies. I teach this as well. I work with others' souls, and that I look at their purpose and their story, and where they like. When I look at somebody, I see 3 more dimensions, basically. I see where they are right now with their aura, and where they are in their journey. I see where they can go, where their potential is.
Right.
Like that is a second light around them. And then I can turn on and off their spirit guides around them. And that was really interesting, and just allowing that all to emerge. And so there was a massive spiritual awareness when this baby came in, even. So I like, from the moment on that I had like her coming up saying like, Mama, I want to come in. I'm like, I'm not ready. After the last pregnancy, I'm not ready for you to come in. I'm like, this pregnancy was too hard. I just need a little bit more time. And then I started following these like things that would drop in meditation, right? And one of them was, I need to go to Bali. And so I said to Dennis, I need to go to Bali. He was like, okay.
Wow.
So we decided to pack up our house, to sell as much stuff as we could bear to let go. We rented a really tiny room for the last stuff that we thought like, okay, we hold on to that just in case. We're like, you know,
right,
a couple of things like the good mattress and stuff like that.
Sure, hey, that's worth keeping.
Yeah, and then we left. So we stopped our contract on our rented house, and we left in April. And 2 weeks before that, I was in meditation, and what came in was like, like, if you want your daughter to come, because I always dreamt of a daughter. I always had that dream of a daughter. And but in both pregnancies, I was like, what? A boy?
Did they not hear my dream, my wish?
Now, that deep, deep soul desire, it was always clear for me I would have a daughter. And then I heard, like, when you want your daughter to come in, it needs to be now. Because this soul is ready and she needs to have those travel experiences around the globe. And I'm like, are you serious? You know? And Dennis was gone. Dennis has his whole soul journey around writing books and being an author, and sharing what he learned with me on this journey, on this planet, with others in his fantasy books in German. And so he was in Germany signing books and like being on the book fair and like connecting with publishers and authors and fans and whatever. And I called him. I said, like, you know what, this morning in meditation, like, this is what came in. And I'm kind of ready, I think. I surrender. And he was like, I'm so glad you're saying this. I'm like, I have cuddled newborns, like 2 newborns today. I have seen pregnant women all over. This is such a big wish. I'm like, so glad you're saying this. Let's go for it.
Oh, lovely. Wow.
And that was Sunday evening, and he came home Monday, and Wednesday I conceived. So that was 3 days later. I know we met in February, and there was no talk about any baby coming or anything. You know? We talked about the Philippines and about Bali and like all of this.
Oh, I remember now. Yes. Yeah. Oh, well, so, you know, beautiful to hear the trust in you, in spirit guides, wherever you want to take it, but ultimately the trust to hear and to listen, you know. So if in wrapping up here, what would be your message to other mothers who are maybe struggling or not, are doing okay, but kind of sometimes question their intuition or question, what do you think from your experience with parenting would be a big share, a big takeaway for people?
Listen. Listen to your children. They are sometimes, they say things to me where I think like the universe is speaking right out of their mouth. Because they're so wise and they see sometimes so much clearer. Also, I teach them a lot about like breathing and like calming down and assessing their feelings. So when I cry, actually my 5-year-old now comes and says like, breathe, Mama. 5 deep breaths, okay? And then we breathe again. So,
I love it.
Listen to yourself and what you feel is right. Because you will find every possible opinion out there about how you have to parent your children. But ultimately, we have that leader in us who knows. And when you see the world from their side of point of view and just go like, okay, I can understand why he's mad when I take this away from him without explaining him why. Right?
Right.
And then really just listen. He will tell you why he's upset. And then just sit there and listen and sit with that feeling of like, oh, I apologize regularly to my children. I say like, I'm so sorry. I didn't see it that way, or I didn't think that far. Or, you know, just owning your own mistakes is a big thing.
Yeah.
And then of course, trusting that they chose you for a reason. There is something they can't learn with anybody else on this earth. They chose to be your child. And no matter when you wake up in your parenting journey, if you wake up in their first year or when they're 10 or when they're 50, you can still make a difference by saying, you know what, I see now. And I'm sorry, and I want to deal with things differently from now on.
Oh, that is
Yeah.
powerful. That is so powerful. I really appreciate you saying that, because it is never too late, right? It is never too late, because the healing can happen at any point. And the awakening, we're all on a journey. We're all on a journey to figure out life, but not to figure it out. You're never finished. You're never at the end. You never got there, right? It is a journey. I think sometimes I feel like, oh, we use the word journey too often, but I don't know. It's a travel. It's an ongoing process. So that is
There's never
beautiful.
an end to it. Never. There's
No.
always another layer. And when you think you have arrived somewhere, there's like another thing where you go like, oh my God, did I just say that? Did I just shame him for not doing what I wanted because it was more convenient to me? You know?
Yeah, yes,
Things
and
like
that's
that.
ongoing. And then to top all of that is the kindness to yourself, that it's okay. That it's okay. So Annika, thank you so very, very much. This has been so eye-opening and such a delight. For people to reach you would be to go to your website. Would that be what would you suggest? The lightmaiden.com.
Lightmaiden.com, exactly. Yeah, you can find everything there. I have resurrected my happy birth story, or like empowering birth story blog, and at lightmothers.com as well. But you can find everything on lightmaiden.com. Exactly. Yeah.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you so very much.
Thank you for having me. Thanks, Anja. It was a pleasure and a delight, and I love talking to you.
Me too. Me too.